Hey, Ted with Blue Forest here, and today I want to talk a little bit about the permaculture principle of observation. Here in northern Minnesota, it's early spring. It's kind of in that time between when the ground is thawing, the snow is melting, and it's raining. So we got a lot of moisture in the landscape. At the same time, there's not a ton that we can do in terms of getting into the ground or moving plants or working on the garden besides starting seeds. So oftentimes it can feel like there's not a lot to do. But this is actually a great time of year to get out and observe the landscape, especially in regards to water and the movement of water across the landscape. We're going to take a little journey across the property and take a look at some different water spots and how water is interacting with the landscape here. So let's get to it. Taking a look at our pathway here, we can see it's getting pretty wet. There's actually some surface runoff. You can see there's an old layer of wood chips down. As we go up slope, it dries out a little bit. But the pattern here, we know this is a low spot. It's also our walkway. So we continuously try to raise it up by throwing down fresh wood chips every year. It keeps it from getting all mucky. And we can actually harvest the decomposed mulch as it dries out later in the season and use it to raise up beds. So that's a pattern we kind of use throughout the landscape. But one way to deal with some water. You got a swale system here. It's starting to fill up. You can see some standing water there. It's definitely not all the way full. But this is water that would otherwise just run right off the land. And we're slowing it down and hopefully letting it infiltrate. You got a pretty cold protected spot here that's still iced up and frozen behind this fir tree. But as we look into the pond, the swale empties into the pond, and the pond is quite full right now. The ducks seem pretty happy about that fact. Look at them go. This is as high as the pond will get. If we get down to the other end, there's an outlet overflow that I checked out earlier this morning, and it's flowing well. So very important feature if you have a pond and you have it filling up from rainwater or other catchments, you need to have an overflow. What we don't want is for this pond to keep rising and have it eventually breach this dam wall at some point. That would lead to severe erosion and the destruction of the dam wall. But it's working well, holding water and providing some duck habitat. It's maybe hard to see here, but the base of the ground here is pretty wet. Zoom in, you can see there's some standing water, just barely. The location of this path is at the base of our back hillside. You pan up. There's a slope going up to the hill. And as the slope comes down, down, we have it terraced, but it's coming down. And right at this point, it kind of starts to flatten out. So it's going from the, geez, what do you call it? Convex to concave. One way or the other, I might have those mixed up. But anyways, at that point, you can see the water that's rushing down the hillside underground here is starting to seep out once the grade begins to level off a bit. So that's something to note. This is an area too where we use as a pathway. So we try to build it up, soak up some of that water. Again, get your feet above the muck. But it's good to note that it's accumulating there early in the spring. Let's continue up the hill and see what things look like up on top of that ridge. So I'm at the top of the ridge in our Terrace Garden, or Upper Terrace Garden as it's forming. Made another video about this, so you can check that out. But it's interesting to see this excavation I dug, which I initially was thinking maybe for a pond. It's holding no water. And if we look here to the side, there is an active trickle of water coming into it, and it's just infiltrating straight into the ground. This soil material, the subsoil, is very sandy and rocky. It's not going to hold water pretty much no matter how much you pour in there. But we can follow this water up here, and we can see right above the hill there is standing water. Some places where I moved large stones, it has filled up. Follow this little trench over. That was the home of a rather large stone that my friend Nate helped me move. And that is full. Over into there we can see the water also standing. Now if I look further up the slope, I talked about this before, but this is a valley form. This is where the water naturally wants to run down. It's kind of interesting to see when the city put this trail in up here, they shaped it so water could run off here, and they also shaped it so water could run off here. I've never seen water running off over there before. So that's why it's important to come out and actually look during these wet rain events to see how water moves through the landscape. That's not where water is coming down from upslope. It's coming down right here. So as we continue to follow this valley, it's wet. There's standing water at various points here. There's some pooling down below, and it continues off down that way. These are all great observations to have. I think, and I was thinking this prior to this observation, but instead of going with a pond type feature here, which I don't think would be able to hold water throughout the year just based on a rainwater filling, we'll take the more of the crater garden approach, and maybe I'll talk about this in another video. The idea is, like it sounds, having a crater type form bounded by raised areas on both sides, providing extra microclimates for different niches and growing habitats. But yeah, it's really amazing to just see this water flowing across the top of the soil, sheeting off, running down here into this hole where I removed another large rock, and it just disappears. It sinks right down. Beyond that, there is no running water. So probably have to do some reshaping of the water flows up here, but I'm happy to note where the movement of the water is. And it looks like if there was going to be any sort of vernal pond feature, it would have to be maybe more over in this area. Here I'm just looking at the rainwater that's coming off the gutters in my back roof. Now this setup could absolutely be better, more efficient, look nicer. And I hope to do that at some point in the future, but right now I figure I might as well rotate some buckets and vessels through here and collect the rainwater as it comes. But just to end the water observations, really try to utilize the different times of the year, the different weather events, the different seasons, to get out and observe your property, the land, see what it's doing, how it's reacting. The early spring here with the rains and the high water table is only one possible time when you can do this. You can do it throughout the seasons and gain different knowledge. So if we can take one thought away from this, it's observe what's happening. The landscape is telling you a lot of things every day, every hour. it's up to us to pay attention and learn those lessons. So to sum up, it's useful to get out and observe what's happening in the landscape at all times of the year, at all times of day and night too. What we saw today is not what we're going to see in the late summer or fall. So it's important to get out and observe. We can learn from our observations, especially if we're taking the time to really get to know our environment, and we can plan accordingly. In this case, to maximize the impact of water, to slow it down in the landscape, to spread it out, and to help it infiltrate into the ground instead of running off. So I really encourage you to work on your observation practices. You can do it in a number of ways, but utilize all seasons and all times of day. You can certainly learn a lot about what's going on if you take the time to engage with the landscape and pay attention to what it's telling you.